In the Chains of Crime by E.W.Hornung. Story 5. The Return Match. I had turned into Piccadilly one thick evening in the following November, when my guilty heart stood still at the sudden grip of a hand upon my arm. I thought, I was always thinking, that then my inevitable hour was come at last. It was only Raffles, however, who stood smiling at me through the fog. "Well met," he said. "I've been looking for you at the club." "I was just on my way there," I returned, with an attempt to hide my tremors. It was an ineffectual attempt, as I saw from his broader smile and the little discrepitory shake of his head. "Come up to my place instead," he said. "I've got something amusing to tell you." I made excuses, for his tone foretold the kind of amusement, and it was a kind against which I had successfully set my face for months. I've I can but reiterate that to me, at all events, there was never anybody in the world so irresistible as Raffles when his mind was made up. That we had both been independent of crime since our little service to Sir Bernard Debenham, that there had been no occasion for that masterful mind to be made up in such direction for many a day, was the undeniable basis for a longer spell of honesty than I had hitherto enjoyed during the term of our mutual intimacy. Be sure I would deny it if I could. The very thing I am to tell you would discredit such a boast. I made my excuses, as I have said, but his arm slid through mine and his little laugh of light-hearted mastery. And even while I argued, we were on his staircase in the Albany. His fire had fallen low. He poked and replenished it after lighting the gas. As for me, I stood by sullenly in my overcoat until he dragged it off of my back. "What a chap you are," said Raffles playfully. "One would really think I'd possessed to crack another rib this blessed night. Well, it isn't that, Bunny, so get into the chair and take one of these Sullivans and sit tight." He held the match to my cigarette and brought me a whiskey and soda. Then he went into the lobby, and just as I was beginning to feel happy, I heard a bolt shot home. It cost me an effort to remain in my chair. Next moment he was straddling another and gloating over my discomfiture across his folded arms. "You remember Milchester, Bunny, my boy?" His tone was as bland as mine was grim, and I answered that I did. "We had a little match there that wasn't down on the card. Gentlemen and players, if you recollect." "I don't forget it." "Seeing that you never got any innings, so to speak, I thought you might. Well, the gentlemen romping in winners, and the players were presently to quad. Poor beggars. Don't be too sure. You remember that the fellow we saw in the inn? The florid, overdressed chap who, I told you, was one of the cleverest thieves in town?" "I remember him. Crochet, his name turned out to be." "Well, it was certainly the name he was convicted under, so Crochet let it be. You needn't waste any pity on him, old chap, after he escaped from the Dartmoor yesterday afternoon." "Well done." Raffles smiled, but his eyebrows had gone up and his shoulders had followed suit. "You are perfectly right. It was very well done indeed. I wonder you didn't see it in the paper. In a dense fog in the moor yesterday, old Crochet made a bolt for it and got away without a scratch under the heavy fire. All honor to him. I agree. A fellow with that much grit deserves his liberty. But Crochet has a good deal more. They hunted him all night long, couldn't find him for nuts, and that was all you missed in the morning papers." He unfolded a Pall Mall, which he had brought in with him. "But listen to this. Here's an account of the escape, with just the addition which puts the whole thing on a higher level. The fugitive has been traced to Tance, where he appears to have committed a particularly daring outrage in the early hours of his morning. He is reported to have entered the lodgings of a Reverend A.H. Ellingsworth, curate of the parish, who missed his clothes on rising in the usual hour. Later in the those of the convict were discovered neatly folded at the bottom of the drawer. Meanwhile, Crawshay had made good his second escape, though it is believed that so distinctive a disguise will lead to his recapture during the day. What do you think of that, Bunny? He is certainly a sportsman, said I, reaching for the paper. There's more, said Raffles. He's an artist, and I envy him. The curate of all men. Beautiful, beautiful! But that's not all. I saw just now that on the board of the club that there's been an outrage on the Lion of Dawlish. Parson found insensible in a 6-feet way. Our friend again. The telegram doesn't say so, but it's obvious. He simply knocked out some other fellow, changed clothes again, and come gaily to town. Isn't it great? I do believe that it's the best thing of the kind that's ever been done. But why should he come to town? In an instant, enthusiasm faded from Raffles' face. Clearly, I had reminded him of some prime anxiety, forgotten in his impersonal joy over the exploit of a fellow criminal. He looked over his shoulder towards the lobby before replying. I believe, he said, that the beggar's on my tracks. As he spoke, he was himself again, quietly amused, cynically unperturbed, and characteristically enjoying the situation of my surprise. But look here, what do you mean? Said I. What does Crawshay know about you? Not much, but he suspects. Why should he? Because, in his way, he's very nearly as good a man as I am. Besides, my dear bud, with eyes in his head and brains behind him, he couldn't help suspecting. He saw me once in town at the Old Baird. He must have seen me that day in the pub, on the way to Milchester, as well as afterwards on the cricket field. As a matter of fact, I know he did, for he wrote and told me so before his trial. He wrote you? And you never told me? The old shrug answered the old grievance. What was that good? What good was that, dear my fellow? It would only have worried you. Well, what did he say? That he was sorry that he had been run in before getting back to town, and he had proposed doing himself the honor of paying me a call. However, he trusted it was not only pleasure deferred, but he begged me not to go and get lagged myself before he came out. Of course, he knew the Melrose necklace was gone, though he hadn't got it, and he said that the man who could take that and leave the rest was a man after his own heart. And so on, with certain little proposals of the far future, which I fear he may be very near future indeed. I'm only surprised he hasn't turned up yet. He looked again towards the lobby, which he had left in darkness, with the inner door shut as carefully as the outer one. I asked him what he meant to do. Let him knock if he gets this far. The porter is to say I'm out of town. It will be true, too, in another hour or so. You're going off tonight? By the 7:15 from Liverpool Street. I don't say much about my people, Bunny, but I have the best sisters married into a country parson in the eastern counties. They always make me welcome and let me read the lessons for the sake of getting me to church. I'm sorry you won't be there to hear me on Sunday, Bunny. I've figured out some of the best schemes in the parish, and I know no better port in a storm. But I must pack. I thought I'd just let you know where I was going, and why, in case you cared to follow my example. He flung the stump of a cigarette into the fire, stretched himself as he rose, and remained so long in that inelegant attitude that my eyes mounted from his body to the face. A second later they had followed his access to the room, and I also was on my legs. On the threshold of the folding doors that divided bedroom and sitting room, a well-built man stood in an ill-fitting broadcloth and bowed to us with his bullet head presented an unbroken disk of short red hair. Brief was my survey as the astounded apparition. The interval was long enough for Raffles to recover his composure. His hands were in his pockets and a smile on his face. When he left, my eyes flew back to him. Let me introduce you, Bunny, he said. To our distinguished colleague, Mr. Reginald Crochet. The bullet head bobbed up, and there was a wrinkled brow above the coarse, shaven face that was crimson. I remember from the grip of the collar several sizes too small, but I noted something conscientious at the time. I jumped to my own conclusion, and I turned to Raffles with an oath. "It's a trick," I cried. "It's another of your cursed tricks. You got him here, and then you got me. You want me to join you, I suppose. I'll see you hanged." So cold was the stare which met my outburst that I became ashamed of my words while they were still yet upon my lips. "Really, Bunny," said Raffles, and turned his shoulder with a shrug. "Lord you have you," cried Crochet. "He knew nothing. He didn't expect me. He's all right. You're the cool canary, you are," he went on to Raffles. "I knew you were, but do me proud. You're after my own kidney." And he thrusts out a shaggy hand. "Well, after that," said Raffles, taking it, "what am I to say? But you must have heard my opinion of you. I am proud to make your acquaintance. How the deuce did you get at it?" "Never mind you," said Crowley, loosening his collar. "Let's talk about how I'm better to get out. Lord, love you, that's the better. There was a livid ring round your bull neck that he fingered tenderly. "Didn't know how much longer I'd have to play the gent," he replied. "Didn't know you who I'd bring in." "Whiskey and soda?" inquired Raffles, when the convict was in the chair from which I had leapt. I don't drink it neat," said Crochet. "But I talk business first. You don't get over me like that, Lord love ye." "Well then, what can I do for you?" "You know without telling me." "Well, give it a name." "Clean eels, then. That's what I want to show, and I leaves you the way you to it. We're brothers in arms, though I ain't armed this time. It ain't necessary. You're too much sense. But brothers we are, and you'll see a brother through. Let's put it to that. You'll let me see through your own way. I leave it all to you." His tone was rich in consolation and concession. He bent over and tore a pair of button boots from his bare feet, which he had stretched towards the fire, painfully uncurling his toes. "I hope you take a larger size than them," he said. "I've had a see of you during the time. I wasn't in long before you." "And you won't tell me how you got out in?" "What's the use? I can't teach you nothing. Besides, I want out. I want out of London and England and bloomin' Europe too. That's all I want of you, mister. I won't ask how you do the job. You know where I come, and 'cause I heard you say, and you where I want to lead for, 'cause I've just told you. The details I leave entirely to you." "Well," said Raffles, "we must see what we can do." "We must," said Crochet, leaning back comfortably, and began twirling his stubby thumbs. Raffles turned to me with a twinkle in his eye, but his forehead was scored with thought, and resolve mingled with resignation in the lines of his mouth, and he spoke exactly as though he and I were alone in the room. "You see the situation, Bunny. If our friend here is caught, to speak his language, he means to blow the gaff on you and me. It's too considerate to say so in so many words, but it's plain enough and natural enough that's the matter. I would do the same in his place. We had a bulge before. He has it now. It's perfectly fair. We must take on this job. We aren't in a position to refuse it, and even if we were, I should take it on. Our friend isn't a great sportsman, and he's got clear away from Dartmoor. It would be 1,000 pities to let him go back, nor shall he. Not if I can think of a way of getting him abroad." "Any way you like," murmured Crochet, with his eyes shut. "I leave it all to you." "But you'll have to wake up and tell us things." "All right, mister, but I'm fair on the rocks for sleep." As he stood up, blinking. "Think you were traced to town?" "Must have been." "And here?" "Not in this fog, with any luck." Raffles went into the bedroom, lit the gas there, and returned next minute. "So you got in by the window?" "That's about it." "It was devilish smart of you to know which one. It beats me how when you brought it up in daylight, fog or no light." But let that pass. You don't think you were seen? I don't think it, sir. Well, let's hope that you're right. I shall reconnoiter and soon find out. As you'd better come too, Bunny, and have something to eat and talk it over. Raffles looked at me. I looked at Crawshaw, anticipating trouble, and trouble brewed in his blank, fierce face, in the glitter of his startled eyes, and the sudden closing of his fists. "And what's to become of me?" he cried out with an oath. "You wait here." "No, you don't," he roared, and at a bound he had his back to the door. "You don't get around me like that, you cuckoos." Raffles turned to me with a twitch of the shoulders. "That's the worst of these professors," he said. "They will not use their heads. They see the pegs and mean to hit them. But that's all they do and see and mean. And they think we're the same. No wonder we licked them last time." "Don't talk through your neck," snarled the convict. "Talk out straight, curse you." "All right," said Raffles. "I'll talk as straight as you like. You say you can put yourself in my hands. You leave it all to me. But you don't trust me an inch. I know what's to happen if I fail. I accept the risk. I take this thing on. Yet you think I'm going straight out to give you away and make you give away in turn? You're a fool, Mr. Kershaw. Though you have broken Dartmoor, you've got to listen to a better man and obey him. I see you through in my own way, and not at all. I come and go as I like, and with whom I like, without your interference. You stay here and lie just as low as you know how. Be as wise as your word, and leave the whole thing to me. If you won't, if you're a fool enough to not trust me, there's the door. Go out and say what you like, and be hanged to you." Crawshaw slapped his thigh. "That's talking," he said. "Lord love you, I know where I am when you talk like that. I'll trust you. I know a man when he gets his tongue between his teeth, and you're all right. I don't say much about this other gent, though I saw him come along with you in the time you was in the provinces. But if he's a pal of yours, Mr. Raffles, he'll be all right, too. I only hope you gents ain't too stony." And he touched his pockets with a rueful face. "I only went for their togs," he said. "You never struck two such a stony brook coasters in your life." "Oh, that's all right," said Raffles. "We'll see you through properly. Leave it to us, and you sit right." "Right, said Crawshaw, "and I'll have a sleep time while you're gone. But no spirits, no thank you, not yet. Once let me get loose on the drink, and Lord love you, I'm a gone coon." Raffles got his overcoat, a long, light driving coat, I remember, and even as he put it on, our fugitive was dozing in the chair. We left him murmuring incoherently, with the gas out and his bare feet toasting. "Not such a bad chap, that professor," said Raffles on the stairs. "A real genius in his way, too, though his methods are a little elementary for my taste. But technique isn't everything. To get out of Dartmoor and into Albany in the same 24 hours is a whole that justifies its parts. Good Lord." We had passed a man in the foggy courtyard, and Raffles had nipped my arm. "Who's that?" "The last man we want to see. I hope to heaven he didn't hear me." "But who is he, Raffles?" "Our old friend Mackenzie from the yard." I stood still in horror. "Do you think he's on Carway's track?" "I'll find out." And before I could remonstrate, he had wheeled me around and found my voice. He merely laughed, whispering that the bold course was not a safe one at the time. "But it's madness." "Not it. Shut up. Is that you, Mr. Mackenzie?" The detective turned about and scrutinized us keenly, and through the gaslight mist I noticed that his hair was grizzled at the temples, and his face was cadaverous from the wound that he had nearly been his death. "I don't know you, sirs," said he. "I hope you're fit again," said my companion. "My name is Raffles, and we met at the Milchester last year." "Is that a fact?" cried the Scotsman with a quiet start. Now I remember your face, and yours too, sir. Aye, young was a bad business, but it ended very well, and that's the main thing." His native caution had returned to him. Raffles pinched my arm. "Yes, it ended splendidly, but for you," he said. "But what about this escape of the leader of the gang, that fellow Kershaw? What do you think of that, eh? I have none of the peculiars, replied the Scots. Good, cried Raffles. I was only afraid you might be on his tracks once more. Mackenzie shook his head with a dry smile and wished us a good evening with an invisible window was thrown up and a whistle blown through the fog. We must see this out, whispered Raffles. Nothing more natural than a little curiosity on our part. After him, quick! Then we followed the detective into another entrance on the same side from that which we had emerged. The left hand was one's way to Piccadilly. Quite openly we followed him, and at the foot of the stairs met one of the porters of the place. Raffles stopped him and asked what was wrong. Nothing, sir, said the fellow glibly. Rot, said Raffles. That was Mackenzie, the detective. I've just been speaking to him. What's he here for? Come on, my good fellow. We won't give you away, if you've instructions not to tell. The man looked quaintly wistful. The temptation of an audience hard upon him. The door shut upstairs, and he fell. It's like this, he whispered. This afternoon a gentleman comes after rooms, and I send him to the office. One of the clerks he goes round to and shows him the empties, and the gentleman particularly struck on the set of coppers is nipping now. So he sends the clerk to fetch the manager, as there is one or two things he wished to speak about. And when they come back, Bloated the Gent wasn't gone. Beg your pardon, sir. And he's clean disappeared off the face of the premises. And the porter looked at us with shining eyes. Well, said Raffles. Well, sir, they looked about, and at last they gave up on him a bad job. Thought he'd changed his mind and didn't want to tip the clerk, so they shut up the place and come anyway. And that's all till about half an hour ago, when I takes the manager to extra special straw. In about 10 minutes he comes running out of the note and says to meet with Scotland Yard in a hansom. And that's all I know, sir, straight. The coppers is up there now, and the tech and the manager, and they think their gent is about the place somewhere still. Lest, I reckon that's their idea, but who he is or what they want it for, I don't know. Jolly interesting, said Raffles. I'm coming out to inquire. Come on, Bunny, there should be some fun. Beg your pardon, Mr. Raffles, but you won't say anything about me. Oh, not I. You're a good fellow. I won't forget it if it leads to sport. Sport! He whispered as we reached the landing. It looks like precious poor sport for you and me, Bunny. What are we going to do? I don't know. There's no time to think. This, to start with. And he thundered on the shut door, and a policeman opened it. Raffles strode past him with the air of a chief commissioner, and I followed before the man, who recovered from his astonishment. The bare boards rang under us. In the bedroom we found a knot of officers stooping over a low ledge of the window ledge in the constable's lantern. Mackenzie was the first to stand upright and greeted us with a glare. May I ask what you gentlemen want? He said severely. We want to lend a hand, said Raffles briskly. We lent it once before, and it was my friend here who took over from you the fellow who split with the rest and held him tight. Surely that entitles him, at all events, to at least see any fun that's going on. As for myself, well, it's true I only helped to carry you out of the house, but for an old acquaintance' sake I do hope, my dear Mackenzie, that you will permit us to share such sport as there may be. I myself can only stop for a few minutes in any case. Then you won't see much, growled the constable, for he's not up here. Constable, go you and stand at the foot of the stairs, and let no other body up on any consideration. These gentlemen may be able to help us, after all. That's kind of you, Mackenzie, cried Raffles warmly. But what is it all? I questioned one of the porters, but could get nothing out of him except that somebody had been in these rooms and not since had been seen. He's a man I want, said Mackenzie. He's concealed himself somewhere about the premises, or I'm very much mistaken. Do you reside in Albany, Mr. Raffles? I do. Will your rooms be near these? On the next staircase but one. Have you just left them? Oh, just. Been in all the afternoon, perhaps? Oh, no. Then I may have to search your rooms. I'm prepared to search every room in Albany. Our man seems to have gone for our leads, but unless he's left more marks outside than in, or we find him up there, I shall have the entire building to ransack." "I will leave you my key," said Raffles at once. "I'm dining out, but I'll leave it with the officer down below." I caught my breath in a mute amazement. What was the meaning of this insane promise? It was wistful, gratuitous, suicidal. It made me pluck on sleeve of open horror and disgust. But with a word of thanks, Mackenzie had returned to the windowsill, and we sauntered unwatched through the folding doors into the adjoining room. Here was a window looked down to the courtyard. It was still open, and as we gazed out the apparent idleness, Raffles reassured me. "It's all right, Bunny. You do what I tell you and leave the rest to me. It's a tight corner, but I don't despair. What you've got to do is to stick to these chaps, especially if they search my rooms. They mustn't poke about more than necessary, and they won't if you're there." "But where will you be? You're never going to leave me in the land alone." "If I do, it will be to turn up trumps at the right moment. Besides, there are such things as windows and Crashaw's a man to take his risks. But you must trust me, buddy. You've known me long enough." "And you're going now?" "Now there's no time to lose. Stick to them, old chap, and don't let them suspect you, whatever else you do." He lay a hand on my shoulder. Then he left me at the window and recrossed the room. "I've got to go now," I heard him say, "but my friend will stay and see this through, and I'll leave my key on the rooms downstairs with the constable. Good luck, Mackenzie. I only wish I could stay." "Good night, sir," came the preoccupied voice, "and many thanks." Mackenzie was still busy at his window, and I remained at mine, a prey to mingled fear and wrath for all my knowledge of Raffles and his infinite resource. But this time I felt that I knew more or less what he would do in any given emergency. At least I could conjecture a characteristic course of equal cunning and audacity. He would return to his rooms, put Crochet on his guard, and stow him away. Now, there were such things as windows. Then why was Raffles going to desert us all? I thought of many things, lastly of a cab. These bedroom windows looked to a narrow side street. They were not very high. From them a man might drop on the roof of a cab, even as it passed, and be given away, even under the noses of the police. I pictured Raffles driving that cab, unrecognizably in the foggy night, and a vision came to me as he passed under the window, tucking up the collar of his great driving coat on the way to his rooms. It was still with me when he passed again on his way back and stopped to hand the constable his key. "We're on his track," said a voice behind me. "He's got up the leads, sure enough, though he's managed from yon window a muster to me. We're going to lock up here and try from the attics. You'd better come with us if you don't mind." The top floor of the Albany and elsewhere is devoted to the servants, congeries, and little kitchens and cubicles, many used by lumber rooms, but Raffles was among the many. The annex in this case was, of course, empty, as were the rooms below, and that was lucky, for we now filled it, that with a manager who now joined us, and another tenant whom he brought with him, to Mackenzie's undisguised annoyance. "Better let in Piccadilly at a crown a head," he said. "Here, my man, out you go on the roof and make one less, and I have a truncheon road." We crowded to the little window, which Mackenzie took care to fill, and a moment yielded no sound but the crunch and slither of the constabulary boots on sooty slates. Then came a shout. "What is it?" cried Mackenzie. "A rope," we heard, "hanging from the spout by a hook." "Sirs," cried Mackenzie, "that's how he got up from below. He would just sling it until he caught it, and never touched it. How long a rope, my lad?" "Quite short. I've got it." "Did it hang over a window?" "Ask him that," cried the manager. "He can see if by leaning by the parapet." The question was repeated by Mackenzie. A pause, and then, Yes, it did. Ask him how many windows are long, shouted the manager in high excitement. 6, he said Mackenzie next minute as he drew in his head and shoulders. I should like to see those rooms, 6 windows long. Mr. Raffles, announced the manager after a mental calculation. Is that a fact? Cried Mackenzie. Then we shall have no difficulty at all. He's left me his key down below. The words had a dry, speculative intonation, which even then I found time to dislike. It was as though the coincidence had already struck the Scotsman as something more. Where's Mr. Raffles? Asked the manager, as we all filed downstairs. He's gone out to his dinner, said Mackenzie. Are you sure? I saw him go, I said. My heart was beating horribly. I would not trust myself to speak again, but I wound my way to a front place in the little procession, and was, in fact, the second man to cross the threshold that had been the Rubicon of my life. As I did so, I uttered a cry of pain, for Mackenzie had trod back heavily on my toes. In another second I saw the reason, and saw it was another cry. A man was lying at full length before the fire on his back, with a little wound and a white forehead, and the blood running into his eyes. And the man was Raffles himself. Suicide, he said. No, there's the poker. It looks more like murder. He went on his knees and shook his head quite cheerfully. It ain't even murder, he said with a shade of disgust in a matter-of-fact voice. He is no more than a flesh wound, and I have my doubts whether it felled him, but, sirs, he just stinks of chloroform. He got up and fixed his keen grey eyes upon me. My own were filled with tears, but they faced him unashamed. I understood you to say that you saw him go out, he said sternly. I saw that long driving coat, of course. I thought he was inside it. And I could have sworn it was the same gent when he gave me the key. It was the disconsolate voice of the constable in the background. On him turned Mackenzie, white to the lips. You'd think anything, some of you policemen, he said. What's your number, you rotter? P-34? You'll be hearing more from this, Mr. P-34. If that gentleman was dead, instead of coming to himself while he was talking, do you know what it would be? Guilty of his manslaughter. You stuck pig in buttons. Do you know who you've let slip, Butterfingers? Crochet, no less. Him that broke Dartmoor yesterday. By God, that made you P-34. If you lose him, I'll hound you from the force. Working face, shaking fists, and calm ran fire. It was a new side of Mackenzie, and one to remember. Next moment, he was dashed from our midst. Difficult thing to break your own head, said Raffles later. Infinite easier to cut your own throat. Chloroform's another matter. When you've used it on others, you know how to dose it nicely. So you thought I was really gone. Poor old bunny. But I hope Mackenzie saw your face. He did, said I. I would not tell him how Mackenzie had seen, however. That's all right. I wouldn't have had you miss it for the whole world. But you mustn't think me a brute, old boy. For I fear that man, and, you know, we sink or swim together. And now we sink or swim with Crossley, too, I said dolefully. Oh, not we, said Raffles with conviction. Old Crochet's a true sportsman, and he'll do us by what we've done him. Besides, this makes us quits, and I don't think, Bunny, that we'll take on professors again.